Never been to Burgundy? No? You really should. Hi everyone, welcome back to a new video. This time I'm taking you to France, specifically to Burgundy. Now, up until 2015, Burgundy was actually its own administrative region. Today, when we talk about Burgundy, we are referring to a historical landscape in central France. It covers about 31.5 thousand square kilometers, roughly 1.7 million people call it home, and Dijon serves as its own unofficial capital. Over Easter, we wanted to get away for a few days, but we didn't want to go far and we definitely didn't want to fly. So here's the thing. Most people in Switzerland head south during the holidays. Southern Switzerland, Italy, that general direction. More travelers means more cars, which means traffic jam, and we wanted none of that. Last year, around the same time, we actually did a trip to Alsace in France, and we loved it. The weather wasn't great, but honestly, the people who drove south had the same problem, except they also sat in traffic for hours. So this year we figured, hey, why not try Burgundy? The forecast looked promising and the route was wide open. After the breakfast, around 8 in the morning, we hit the road. Our first destination was Mâcon, which is about 450 kilometers from where we live. Now, there is a faster route, obviously, but we deliberately choose not to spend the entire drive on the highway. We wanted to actually see something. So we took back roads, drove through tiny villages and soaked into the countryside. Shortly after crossing the Swiss-French border, we stopped to grab some groceries and drinks, and around noon we pulled over for a little roadside picnic. There is something about eating a baguette in a French field that just hits different. We reached our accommodation in Mâcon around 3:30 in the afternoon, and after chilling for a bit, we headed out to explore. Mâcon sits in the southern part of Burgundy, has about 35,000 inhabitants, and it's roughly 60 kilometers north of Lyon. It's a long, stretch-out city, built right along the Saône River. Our first stop was the Église Saint-Pierre. It's kind of a landmark of the city, but honestly the entire old town is beautiful. Outside of the historic center, not so much, but the old town itself is very walkable. The promenade along the river is generally stunning, lined with flowers, and from both sides you get views of those gorgeous historic buildings reflected in the water. Now, one thing about France, you never have to search long for a good restaurant. We picked up completely at random for dinner and it was excellent. And here's the kicker. Even the nicer restaurants in Mâcon are surprisingly affordable, even by French standards. We paid about just 30 euros per person for a 3-course meal with 2 drinks. Try doing that in Switzerland. After the long drive and the Mâcon exploration, let's just say we didn't have any trouble falling asleep. The next morning, right after the breakfast, we were back on the road. Our first stop was Mâconnais. And by the way, our stops were mostly spontaneous. We planned this trip very loosely on purpose. The idea was to explore as things come. We basically knew where we would sleep at night and that was about it. Everything in between, pure discovery. So, Mâconnais. It's not some famous landmark, it's literally a crossroads in the middle of the vineyard country. Grapevines as far as the eye can see, cherry trees everywhere, and this incredible panoramic view of the stunning landscape. Sometimes the best stops are the ones nobody tells you about. Our next stop was Solutré-Pouilly, a tiny village, but the setting is absolutely picture perfect. Vineyard stretching out in front of you, a dramatic rock formation rising in the background, the kind of view that makes you just stand there for a minute and take it in. Heading further north, we wanted to visit Darcy Castle, but unfortunately it was closed. Still, from a distance we could admire a different kind of beauty, the castle framed by the rolling hills. Next up, the Abbey of Cluny. Now, due to the constructions, we had to walk half a way around the town just to find the entrance, but it was absolutely worth it. The old town itself is charming and bustling with people. We asked 3 different people for directions and got 3 completely different answers. So if you ever visit, the entrance is at the back of the building, not on the side, not by the garden like most people told us, the back. It's definitely worth going inside. There is an audio guide that walks you through the history in detail, but in short, this was a former Benedict abbey, and for a very long time it was the largest in the world. It was one of the most influential religious centers of the Middle Ages and served as the starting point for major monastic reforms across Europe. Part of the abbey and some remains of the church, which was largely demolished during Napoleon's era and used as a quarry, are still standing today. In 2007, the French state awarded it the European Heritage label, making it the first monument in France to receive that distinction. After the abbey, we drove to Buxy, a very small town with barely 2,000 people, but it has this massive church, Saint-Germain-d'Auxerre, that you can spot from miles away. If you are passing through, the architecture and the old town are really worth a stop. Further north lies Chalon-sur-Saône, a bigger city with about 45,000 inhabitants and a beautiful old town full of narrow alleys. One cafe after another, one restaurant after another, and those little independent shops you won't find anywhere else. Definitely worth a visit. And if the architecture in the old town isn't enough for you, you can always unwind along the river. Our final destination for the day was Beaune, but we arrived so late that after dinner we spent straight to bed. After a quiet evening in Beaune, we had breakfast and headed into the center to explore this charming little town of about 20,000 people. And let me tell you, Beaune punches way above its weight. One of its most famous landmarks is the Hospices de Beaune, a former hospital founded in 1443 and used as a working hospital all the way until 1971. Today, parts of the old complex serve as a retirement home, while the rest is open as a museum, giving you a fascinating glimpse into healthcare during early modern period. The building itself is an architectural masterpiece, especially the iconic mosaic tiled roof. And here's a fun fact. The hospices are still largely funded by the revenue from vineyards that were donated through inheritances and bequests over the centuries. Once a year, during the Trois Glorieux, the 3 glorious days, a wine auction is held right at the hospice. Any wine merchant in France who cares about their reputation will try to win a barrel. The prize carries a kind of a built-in charity premium. Equally impressive is the Basilique de Notre-Dame de Beaune, a basilica built in the 12th century and classified as a historical monument since 1840. Beaune is also famous for La Moutarderie Fallot, a mustard producer that's been around since 1840 and has been family-owned since 1928. It's the last independent Burgundian mustard mill still standing out of what used to be hundreds. And by the way, the Dijon mustard has nothing to do with the city of Dijon. It's a recipe, not a place of the origin. After exploring the old town, we drove to the Porte on the western edge of the city, the gateway to the Voie de Vignes, or the path of the vineyards. It's exactly what it sounds like. Vineyards stretching out in every direction as far as you can see. Following the vineyards westward, we stumbled upon the Cascade de Brisecou, a simple hiking trail that leads to a waterfall. The trail itself is just as beautiful as the destination. It runs alongside a stream and everything is completely covered in green moss. The waterfall isn't huge, but it fits the surroundings perfectly. From the parking lot, the round trip takes about an hour, and right across from the waterfall there is a picnic spot, ideal for a peaceful lunch break. After the hike, we still had about a 90-minute drive to Dijon, where we spent the night. Dijon is the biggest city in Burgundy, with around 160,000 inhabitants and covering about 40 square kilometers. The old town is relatively compact for a city that size, but it's absolutely packed with stunning buildings and beautiful parks. Our first stop was the Jardin Darcy, a well-kept city garden with loads of greenery, flowers, and an impressive fountain. I have to be honest, the evening before, when we walked past it didn't look all that inviting. But during the day, totally different story. Definitely worth stopping by. Not far from Jardin Darcy is the Porte Dijon, a triumphal arch built in 1788 by architect Jean-Philippe Marais on the foundation of a medieval city gate in honor of Prince Louis Joseph de Conde. Right in the heart of the old town is the Place Française, a small but incredibly lively square surrounded by old houses and a playful fountain. It's also a hotspot for going out in the evening. Right up from the dense old town fabric is Notre-Dame de Dijon, a church with truly jaw-dropping architecture. The facade, with its rows of sculpted figures, the craftsmanship is unbelievable. Really fine, detailed work. Right next to it sits the Ducal Palace. It's massive, sprawling, and incredibly versatile. Parts of it house museums, others have small cafes or a wine cellar. A building that's been standing since 1364 and is still very much alive. Before leaving Dijon, we visited the Cathédrale Saint-Bénigne, Dijon's cathedral. It's also huge, but it doesn't stand out quite as much because the entire neighborhood is filled with equally grand churches and historic buildings. I'll be straight with you. Dijon's old town was my favorite of all the cities we visited. It's generally beautiful, but that doesn't apply to the rest of the city. Dijon is a major transportation, commercial and industrial hub, and you feel that very clearly once you step outside the center. Still, the old town alone makes Dijon absolutely worth a visit. After Dijon, we headed home, but just like on the way there, we skipped the highway, took the back roads and even squeezed in a short hike near the Swiss border. But that's a story for another video. In the end, we got lucky this year. No traffic and 4 straight days of sunshine. The decision to keep things spontaneous also really paid off. Not having a rigid itinerary forced us to actually look around and discover things we never would have found otherwise. This was our second Easter spent in France, and I have a feeling it won't be the last. France has so much to offer and we have barely scratched the surface. By the way, have you ever been to France? And if you're about to say, yeah, I've been to Paris, that doesn't count. Paris is a metropolis and, in my opinion, has very little to do with what France can actually offer. But yeah, that's it for today. I will see you in the next one. Peace.